Brian, the point spread's something like 10.5. I know you're not a point spread guy. Ohio State fans, as you may be noticing in the chat, are rather confident that this is just an Ohio State win. I'm guessing the Notre Dame fans are more like, we can compete, we can win this game. I think it's going to be a heck of a game. What's your confidence level 3 months away, 4 months away?
I'm not even there yet. I'm worried about getting to fall camp healthy. I mean, that's the coach in me, right? I'm not worried about that just yet. Look, here's the reality of it. If you want fans like Ohio State fans and Bama fans and Clemson fans to just stop assuming you're going to get your butt kicked when you play them, then stop getting your butt kicked when you go play them. It's as simple as that. So, so are you upset that it's a 10.5 point spread? I'm like, have you seen what Notre Dame has done in the past against teams ranked in the top 10? It's not pretty. Brian Kelly has a career 3-17 record against top 10 teams that finished in the top 10. And one of those wins was against a Michigan State team that at the time was unranked back in 2013. So no, I haven't thought a lot about the point spread, but we've got to see a lot. We've got to see how Tyler Buchner develops in the spring. Can he stay healthy? And also point spreads to me are little. I mean, like the Ohio State game in 2015, right? And Notre Dame had it down to a 7-point game in the third quarter. Like they just scored. It's kind of like, yeah, but it really wasn't that competitive of a game. It's like I've had a friend that argued with me about this, about the Michigan. Remember was it 4-15 where Ohio State was like barely beating Michigan at halftime. And my buddy was like, this is a really close game. I'm like, are you watching the same game I'm watching? Because this is Ohio State's like fumbling around. Like they're going to blow Michigan out in the second half. And that's exactly what happened. So end of the day, you could be up down 4, you're driving late in the game and you're trying to win it, and you've got to go for it on 4th down, and they pick it off, run it back. You lost by 11, right? I mean, that's why I hate point spreads. You just never know how a game is going to end. So right now, if Notre Dame wants to not be 10-point underdogs to Ohio State or not be a home underdog to Clemson, prove that you can win these games without needing their starting quarterback and 3 best defensive players to be out for the game.
I did like during the NFL draft, the pregame show of the draft, ESPN had Marcus Freeman and Ryan Day on the same set and made mention to Marcus Freeman of the line. And Ryan Day was like, we don't need to be talking about that. And Marcus Freeman is like, keep talking about it.
Yeah, because it's motivation for the players, right? I mean, but at the end of the day, motivation only takes you so far. Once the ball snapped, you're not winning a game because you were an underdog. You're winning that game because you prepared and you executed at a high level. And that at the end of the day. But yes, I'm not going to lie and say that I wouldn't like the spread to get even more, because I think for Notre Dame, it gives you that disrespect card, and sometimes if you're really coached well and you have good leadership, you don't lose that. Even if you go out and beat Ohio State, or maybe it's like the Georgia game in 2019 and the Georgia game in 2017 and 19, Notre Dame had the ball in the 4th quarter with a chance to win both games. You fell short and say, hey, you know what? Let's improve. Let's make some corrections because we almost beat that team, and next time we're going to get our shot. But I hope it's a bigger game, but we'll have to see. Yeah, bigger and faster. I don't know about the bigger part, maybe the faster part, but
yeah, the line, I don't think it does much. It'll do a little bit of motivation. The most motivation that I've ever seen on this beat and watching is after Ohio State lost to Clemson in the playoffs the first time. They were motivated all year long, and then they got to play them again in 2020, and you saw it happen, and that was their motivation. And
they had a game in between that.
Well, from 2019, they had an entire season, but they were motivated by that playoff loss to Clemson in 2020.
About the one in 16 or the one in 19?
19.
Okay, gotcha.
And then they beat them in 2020 in the playoffs, go to the championship game.
Well, Clemson had that in 2015. They had that close loss to Bama, and like, hey, you know what? Like, we can play with these guys. And then it did serve as motivation. But at the end of the day, do you have a good game plan? Right. Can you execute that game plan? And do you have enough talent to outplay that team? I mean, Utah, to me, I thought outplayed Ohio State for most of that game, but they still lost because Ohio State had way better players. I mean, that at the end of the day, motivation only takes. As a coach, look, I've been there. We've done the whole play the disrespect card, but once the ball snapped, you get in the mouth. Nobody's thinking about what the point spread is. That's the reality of it, right? For either team.
Ohio State fans only have to go back 5 or 6 months to the Oregon game and remember what that point spread was. What, 14.5, Tony?
Yeah, something like that. It was too high, it turns out.
Yeah, well, and we've seen that from Ohio State in September's before. I mean, that's the thing is why I think point spreads early in the seasons are kind of nonsense. I mean, what was this point spread for Notre Dame going into Toledo game last year, right? Like, you really don't know what either one of these teams are going to be, and that's why I don't bet. But it's definitely why I would never bet on openers or games in the first month of the season, because you don't know what these teams are going to be.
Especially when you're just trying to get out with a 1-point win any way you can. That's all you care about.
That's it. That's it. No, and I'll say this. I mean, Ohio State may be faster than Notre Dame, but they're definitely not bigger than Notre Dame, especially when you look at the Notre Dame offensive line against the Michigan defense or the Ohio State defensive line.
Well, especially if Ohio State is playing a 4-2-5, they've
Right.
shrunk themselves by the process of it.
Right.
Yes, it will be something to behold. And back to the betting portion of this, it's one of the reasons why I tell people that actually the prediction record against the money line, just saying who's going to win and is actually a more valid prediction. Obviously, it's going to be a higher percentage, but it's actually a more valid prediction than picking against the spread. Nobody quite understands my point there, but it's the point that Ryan was making about having a beat on the game and thinking, okay, this thing's playing out exactly the way I thought, and then suddenly there's a scoop and score with 32 seconds left that doesn't have anything
or the other way around
of the game.
What if Ohio State's up by 17 and they're thoroughly out playing Notre Dame, and Notre Dame gets a garbage touchdown at the end to make it a 10-point win? Okay, you didn't cover, right? You lost, even though the game kind of played out like that type of line would otherwise determine. Yep. So it's just one of a million reasons that, and I'm really cheap and tight. So that's just one of the many reasons I don't bet.
That's a wise move on your part. That's a wise move on your part.